Okay, in this video, I want to explain in the clearest terms I'm able to muster why Trump's blanket country tariffs, China, Mexico, Canada, I want to explain why these blanket tariffs will not work the way that Trump and MAGA think they will. And I will tell you when and how tariffs can work. Now, as a reminder of how clueless people are on this issue, I want to play for you this appearance I had. When I was in Vegas a few months ago, I went on the Sean Mike Kelly podcast. It's supposedly one of the top business podcasts in the country. I don't know whether that's true or not. That's what the podcast claims. And the host of one of these supposedly top business podcasts in the country had no idea how tariffs work. This clip went gigaviral. It was seen something like 50 million times. Take a look at this.
So when it comes to Trump, do you dislike his policies or him as a person or both?
I don't dislike Trump as a person in the sense that I've never met the guy. So I think he has a lot of personality traits that make him completely unsuited to being president. And also, I think his policy prescriptions, to the extent that they exist and he understands them, which is a different part of it. A lot of the stuff Trump talks about, he still doesn't know how tariffs work. We're 8 years into this thing, 9 years in. He still thinks China pays the tariffs when they're paid by American companies.
Yeah, I've seen him talk about tariffs.
Very confused guy.
Wait, so China's not paying tariffs right now?
The tariffs are paid by the American companies that import the Chinese goods. That's the way it's such a fundamental, and I see you looking a little confused on this one.
Yeah, I'm confused.
This is the way tariffs work. What Trump did is place tariffs on Chinese imports. By the time the imports get here, China's been paid for this stuff. Maybe they get net 120 terms, right? But in a sense, China has already transacted. The American company who brings the goods in pays the tariffs.
Really?
You're kidding right now.
No, I thought he said he was raising the tariffs by 50 to 100% for Chinese imports.
You got to clip this. I'm begging you. You got to clip this.
Okay, so as you can see, even the host of one of the top business podcasts in the country doesn't know how this works. Blanket tariffs on an entire country sound really tough, but they almost never work as intended because they don't address the realities of global trade and supply chains. The idea behind tariffs is you make the imported goods more expensive for the company doing the importing. And then if you're an American company and you say, oh, all of a sudden the stuff from China is more money, I'll make it myself. That's the dream, right? I'll hire people here and I'll make it myself. The catch is that, number one, industries don't magically spring up overnight. So in order to say, well, we'll just do domestic steel and domestic smartphones and domestic laptops, this stuff takes years or sometimes decades to build. In the meantime, you also won't just go from China to the US. You'll say, well, where else can I get this thing? Maybe at a little more money. It'll still increase the cost domestically. It won't bring the manufacturing back home. Now, I'll give you an example of failed thinking on this. I saw this video on TikTok. This is a guy who goes by the name Effing History, and he seems to be explaining to us the very big boy truth about how Trump's tariffs are going to be great. Take a listen.
Tariffs are going to make things more expensive. Let me learn you something real quick. When they put tariffs on imported goods, that gives an incentive to domestic companies to produce those goods, increasing...
Wrong. It gives an incentive to domestic companies to figure out how to get them at the cheapest available price. And with a lot of things, you'll get it at a cheaper price, maybe not from China, but what about Malaysia? Or what about, right? So he's wrong about this.
Domestic production would bring down prices. Also,
increasing domestic production will not bring down prices if it's more expensive to produce domestically. This is why a lot of this stuff was outsourced in the first place. This isn't me defending it. It's just saying we've chosen through policy, we want cheaper stuff, but we want to make it in China. If we wanted a $2,000 iPhone, you could do it domestically, but it won't bring down the price.
when domestic producers are competing for customers, that could also drive them to lower the prices even more. I'll give you an example. If they put tariffs on foreign steel companies, then U.S. steel companies are going to start ramping up production. And then U.S. steel companies are going to start competing with each other.
Of course, that's not what would happen. That's not what would happen. And it's not happening. What happens when you put tariffs on Chinese steel is that they will start looking for where can I get this the cheapest. Is the cheapest option to ramp up production in the US, or is the cheapest option just to get it from Vietnam, India, or Malaysia? Well, that's what they're going to do because it'll be more expensive than from China, but still cheaper than making it domestically. Steel, we already get some from Brazil, Japan. We could try to get more if their supply chains can handle it. So a lot of these tariffs just shuffle the global supply chain around, but no matter what, it means higher costs for consumers. Smartphones is a good example. Smartphones are overwhelmingly manufactured in China. If the US imposes a blanket tariff on Chinese electronics, Apple isn't suddenly going to start building iPhones in Kansas, never mind how long it would take them to do that. They'll move production to India. They'll move production to Vietnam, where labor and supply chains are already being developed for cost efficiency. Instead of buying a $1,000 iPhone made in China, you'll pay $1,200 for the same phone made in Vietnam. No new jobs in the US, no new factories in the US. If the US companies do get set up to build here, 6-7 years from now, you'll be able to get your iPhone for $2,000 in today's dollars. Now let's contrast the blanket tariffs with targeted tariffs. Targeted tariffs can work depending on what you're trying to do. It's like if we say, are taxes good or bad? Well, 100% tax would probably not work very well. But what do you mean? Are they good or bad? It's a question of what taxes, at what level, on who. Tariffs aren't good or bad. It's what do you want to achieve and how do you want to do it? Think about the semiconductor manufacturing industry. The US relies heavily on Taiwan for advanced semiconductors. These are critical for everything from smartphones to military equipment. These semiconductors are in everything. That reliance, you can argue, makes the US vulnerable. It's vulnerable economically, geopolitically. Imagine China invades Taiwan, semiconductor production is disrupted. Now what happens? So you could say, well, let's put in place a package to truly encourage domestic production of semiconductors in a targeted and sort of a scaled way that grows over time. So what you would do is say, we are going to put a tariff on certain semiconductors, the ones above a certain technological threshold, when they are coming from Taiwan. We will have an on-ramp for the tariffs. They won't start right away. We're telling you now we're going to ramp them up over this period of time, and we're going to create some incentives to do semiconductor manufacturing domestically. Okay. And then you get a company like Intel that has been interested in expanding chip manufacturing in the US, incentivized to do it with a clear on-ramp and a clear target sort of at the end of the rainbow. That makes sense. Building, operating semiconductor plants does create high-skilled, high-paying jobs in all sorts of different areas, engineering, manufacturing, logistics. So there's this ecosystem that comes with doing this, and you can do it in an adult, mature way rather than tariff on everything from Taiwan. A blanket tariff on all Taiwanese goods would just be hugely disruptive to industries. It would disrupt electronics. It would disrupt machinery, so many different things. And if you do it that way, companies would just shift to sourcing semiconductors from South Korea, Japan, maybe even China. So targeted tariffs in particular ways can be a great economic tool. What Trump is doing makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Is this clear? I hope it is. With Donald Trump being elected and the insane cabinet appointments and everything else he has planned for the next 4 years, right-wing media is trying to create a new normal and convince us that the zeitgeist is changing. So it's never been more important to be an engaged and savvy news consumer. And that's where our sponsor, Ground News, comes in, an independent app and website designed to help you navigate the chaos of today's current events. For every story circulating, Ground News will give you instant access to the sources reporting on it, transparency on political bias and credibility. You can see who owns the news outlets, what are their narratives and special interests that might influence them. This will ease the mental load of sorting through what we see in the media so you can decide where is the truth. We have to stay aware of what Republicans are up to. Ground News is a really valuable tool so that you can stay on top of it. Go to ground.news/Pacman to take advantage of their biggest sale of the year. You'll get 50% off their top tier Vantage plan. The link is in the description, or scan my QR code.